Okay, just make sure it's streaming. Looks good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Very nice. Welcome to all of you. Welcome also to the students watching this or attending this satsang online. We have a lot of great questions, as we do every time. Speaking of which, let me just remind you, if you send me a question by email, be sure to write a satsang question in the subject of the email. Otherwise, it may not get answered here. And we have many more questions from online students than we have from here. So we'll alternate, but we'll take more online questions, try to get through. There's some just great questions. Some we can answer more quickly. First question here. Question comes from Vasanta Kumar, who lives in Chennai, Tamil Nadu. And Vasanta Kumar asks, how does the state of deep sleep differ from the state of samadhi? There's a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is, in samadhi, you're awake. If you fell asleep, that's not samadhi. The long answer requires you to actually understand what is the state of samadhi. That's a huge topic. And what I would suggest for Vasanta Kumar and any of you who want to understand this better, I produced a series of 4 videos called Psychology of Samadhi. If you really want to understand what is samadhi, you go through those 4 videos, you will really understand with complete clarity. So I would suggest that, Psychology of Samadhi. Next question from Karthik in India. Recently, there has been a noticeable rise in cults disguised as religious or spiritual movements. These so-called spiritual leaders try to teach something which is completely in conflict with the teachings of scriptures. They promote fanaticism and dogmatism. Karthik writes very well. I'll just edit this a little bit. What is the reason for the rise in these cults, and how can it be resolved? First of all, I don't think it's correct to say that it's more prevalent now than it has been at any prior time in history. You go back and you'll find generation after generation of cults. And the reason cults arise has to do with a whole variety of reasons, one of which is a charismatic leader. That's kind of like the common denominator to all of these cults. An interesting observation is you can't generalize and say that every charismatic leader is a cult leader. My guru was, I think he was charismatic, but what he developed was certainly not a cult. So, but we can't, what do they say, all that glitters is not gold. All who are cult leaders are not cult leaders. All who are charismatic are not cult leaders, but all cult leaders are charismatic. So first thing, to discern, by the way, what to do about it, Karthik asks, what can you do about it? There's nothing we can do about it. What you can do is you have the responsibility to be discerning. You can't prevent cult leaders from doing what they do and saying what they say. So all we can do is be very careful to discern what is a cult, who is a cult leader, and just to avoid it. It's up to us. No cult leader is going to say, I'm a cult leader. So it's up to us to discern. And by the way, it's a big complex topic. Here's a very, very simple but important feature. if someone is charismatic, they may or may not be a cult leader. One good way of finding out is to find out the lineage of that person. Where are they? Is that the microphone? Let me just turn this off and see. Where are they coming from, so to speak? Or to say, who is their guru? What is the lineage? Let me give a metaphor. Suppose your adult son or daughter is about to get married, and they've chosen their own partner, and you haven't met them yet. Chances are, as a responsible parent, you'd probably want to know something about the marriage partner and about their family, right? Wouldn't you want to know about the family? Because knowing the family would tell you something about who they are. Well, wouldn't that kind of reasoning apply to a guru? Who is their family? Who is their spiritual father and grandfather, etc., etc.? So this is just a very simple, basic way of helping you discern, helping you avoid a cult leader. So I'm not saying this is foolproof, but it certainly is a great starting point. Find out about the origin of this person, who were their teachers, etc. What is a lineage? What is a tradition? Okay, enough said. Next question from followers from Gulmohar Orchid Society in Pune. We are residents of a housing society in Pune, 3 kilometers away from the Osho ashram. That ashram was infamous in the, I think that would be in the 1970s, maybe early 1980s. Oh my gosh. In Pune, they used to call him the sex guru. They called him that for good reason. Anyway, that's not our topic. Even now, by the way, that ashram continues to function. Rajneesh himself, Osho, passed away, I think, in the mid-1990s, but the ashram continues, kind of like a high-end yoga retreat nowadays, or meditation retreat. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. Anyway, that's not our topic here. The question is, we want to know the essential difference between Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita Sampradaya, especially with regard to moksha. And this is another really a great question, but to get into some of the details of these other sampradayas, these other traditions of Vedanta, like Vishishtadvaita and Dvaita, would take some time. And I think our satsang is not really for that kind of question. What I would suggest instead is there's another video dealing specifically with the 3 main sampradayas of Vedanta. There are others, but we'll talk about we can identify 3 as Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, and Dvaita. And the video that deals with those 3 in quite some detail is actually the title, if I remember right, is something like, thank you. Truth is one, why so much divisiveness? And the thumbnail that you see are images of Shankaracharya, Ramanuja, and Madhva. And not that they were so conflicted, but the followers tend to be rather conflicted and divisive. Anyway, please watch that video. It's a fairly, not very extensive. It's a good introduction to the differences between these different traditions. Next, Sajit from Dubai writes, you have taught us several times that we need to take help from all various means and various yogas to attain moksha. So I've said before, if we consider karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, dhyana yoga, these so-called yogas, and it's been incorrectly said that you can choose one. Scriptures don't say you can choose one. Scriptures say you need it all. And Sajjad here has heard me say this statement, we need all the help we can get, so why should we ignore any of those yogas when they can help us? But now Sajjad's question is, he says, can we just use sankirtana, chanting, usually as a group, and sharanagati, surrender, to reach moksha? But why give up the others? First of all, why restrict yourself? Why refuse to take the support of other spiritual teachings, which the ancient rishis considered to be important? You may not think they're important. Ancient rishis thought they were important. So you would be well advised then not to turn aside from that. Sankirtana is a practice common in some devotional groups, and it's wonderful to get together as a group and to chant, and is very very helpful. But it's not enough. We need more than that. And just a little subtle comment: sharanagati, surrender. To be honest, and this is a little bit of a detailed observation, but I think an important one. Sharanagati is not something you can practice. What does it mean to practice surrendering to Ishvara? It's not a practice. Prayer is a practice. Puja is a practice. Sankirtana is a practice. These are things you can do. You can't do so. You can bow down. So suppose you stretch yourself out on the altar, in front of the altar, the Shashtanga Namaskara, your whole body laid flat. That's not necessarily surrender, because if you get up, surrender is what's inside here, not what you do with your body. So I would suggest that sharanagati is not necessarily a practice, it's really the result of intense devotional practice. It's a wonderful result. Okay, let's take one more question here. Question from Mahender. Mahender lives in Fresno, California. Related to the concept of accumulating karma, after watching your videos on the doctrine of karma, I feel that I've gained a solid understanding. However, I recall a famous statement from a paperback I read a while ago, and I'd like some clarification on it. The statement goes, thinking about killing a person again and again in your mind makes you accumulate more bad karma than killing the person once. Okay. Do anyone know where that comes from? Do you know? Okay, I have no idea. The fact that Mahender admits it comes from a paperback makes the source questionable. So rather we should follow scriptures and maybe not so much paperbacks. I have no idea where that statement comes from. Anyway, so first, that's the first comment. But there's a shred of truth, but not really in this statement. To paraphrase, to think about killing a person and to actually kill a person. So which has more significant result? First of all, thinking about killing a person is not necessarily a karma. Our definition of karma is something that's intentional, which means if you accidentally kill a person, some automobile accidents are really accidents, which means you're driving carefully, you're paying attention, somebody jumps out in front of your car. Sadly, it happens. In fact, some people commit suicide by jumping in front of a car. So if somebody commits suicide by jumping in front of your car, do you get papa karma? You get it, right? You killed a person, but there's no papa karma Because there's no intention. Intention is crucial for the committing a karma. If there's no intention, there's no karma. Example I've given many times. If you accidentally step on a bug, there's no karma. But if you unnecessarily smash one of those things, then there's a small papa karma associated with that. So intention is everything. So if you intentionally kill a person, well, we don't need to talk about that. You can understand it. Now, what about thinking about killing a person? Do you know, sometimes our thinking is intentional and sometimes it's not. For example, somebody just rubs you the wrong way and you get enraged and you feel like, I want to kill that person. Sometimes that thought, I want to kill that person, is part of an emotional reaction which by definition you have no control over. That's why we call it an emotional reaction. So if you, in your heat of emotions, if you have that thought, oh, I want to kill this person, that's not even a karma. On the other hand, if you go home and start thinking about how could I kill that person, that's quite different. Okay. So anyway, just some complexity in that question. But honestly, statements from paperbacks, maybe we can find a better source of spiritual wisdom. Okay, we'll take some questions here first. Please.
So you know how you said, I don't think this is working.
So.
Okay, so you know how you said we see male and female, and so Ishvara would have also male and female parts, right?
Not parts.
Well, aspects.
Go ahead.
So you also see, humans and stuff having emotions too.
Mm-hmm.
So then, if with the same logic, Ishvara could also not. Could it not have emotions as well?
Do you know, the problem with that kind of question is it's an attempt to turn Ishvara into a human being. And in general, that's not helpful. To try to drag the God of the cosmos, the creator of the universe, to drag that one down to our level is not very helpful. So I had said before that the one who's the source of the universe must be the source of both male and female, but now you're taking that out of context to make a different point, which is not helpful. So instead of trying to superimpose human traits on Ishvara, we understand Ishvara as the source of all that exists. What exists is, by definition, what exists is natural. And with regard to emotions, emotions are natural. Love is a natural emotion. Kindness, care, hate, frustration, envy, these are natural. Doesn't mean that they're all desirable, but they're all equally natural. So instead of trying to imagine Ishvara with emotions, which is to superimpose human traits on the God of the cosmos, why not we just say Ishvara is the source of all nature, including emotions? Does that work for you? Yeah. Okay. Other questions here?
Okay, so I have been reading about Shankaracharya's teachings for a few months, and in general I've been troubled by how Advaita talks about the world being illusory and comparing dreams to the waking state, and then saying that they're both equally unreal because in the dream you feel that you see other people and you interact, and for that's your reality. But similarly, but when you wake up, that's when you realize that it was not real.
Right.
So similarly, in self-realization, you have to wake up from this dream. And then also talking about Ishvara, they describe them as being like, this is like a cosmic, like Maya or illusion. Like Ishvara is in a state of dreaming. No, that's not true.
That's Shankara never said that.
But I feel like
People say that about Shankara, especially like the ISKCON will make these accusations about Shankara. But Shankara himself never said that. Anything more to your question?
Yeah, I was like, I read about the Mandukya Karika and Shankara's teacher's teacher, Gaudapada, and they both have their commentaries on there, and they both just equate dreaming and waking, and they just say there's not.
It's a little more subtle than that.
Yeah.
Good. So let me respond to it. You have a good first approximation understanding. If you in mathematics, when you approach a very complicated thing, sometimes there's what they call a first approximation. That is I don't want to say superficial, because what you're studying is not superficial, but there's so much more subtlety that it'll take you some time before you get there. For example, a first approximation is that the world is illusory. That's the first approximation. The world is not illusory, but it's a good place to start. The world is not a dream, but it's a good place to start. What those statements refer to, and when you understand Shankara's teachings more clearly and Gaudapada Acharya's teachings more clearly, you'll find that the real point is not as real as your true nature, Satchidananda Atma. Differentiating orders of reality. Waking and dream is used again and again because it's something we experience again and again, and it shows so clearly two different degrees of reality. One is a lesser degree of reality, the other is a greater degree of reality. And now before we continue, what do we mean by degree of reality? And we actually have a very specific definition for degree of reality. That which is more abiding is more real. That which is less abiding, which means transient or ephemeral, is less real. Any phones can be turned off? So, here's the point. The dream experience goes away when you wake up. Then, on analogy, this waking experience gets superseded by another reality. Not exactly that we wake up, but it gets superseded by another reality, a reality that, from the standpoint of which even this worldly existence is transient. In fact, we know there are kalpas or big bangs and so forth, so we know that to some extent the world in which we live is not permanent. It's always subject to change. So there is an absolutely unchanging reality we call Brahman, and from the standpoint of Brahman, this universe doesn't exist at all. But then teachings of Vedanta are meant for whom? Brahman? Teachings of Vedanta are meant for us. And we live in this world of duality. So the teachings of Vedanta address us at the level of our dualistic experience. And from the level of our dualistic experience, they explain that there is a reality beyond what we experience in life. Meaning, it's not an illusion. And just to give you an idea of Vedanta's approach, So Vedanta again and again uses the example of the clay pot. Pots come and go, but the clay remains. So this can be turned into shards, into dust. It can be reconstituted as mud, and we can make another pot, etc. So we would say in this metaphor, clay is more real than pot, right? Is pot an illusion? Is that the right word to use? It's not the right word to use. So in the same way you wouldn't call this pot an illusion, you wouldn't call this world an illusion. So I'm just sharing this little bit with you. You're on the right track, but it's going to take some more time. These are very subtle topics, and oftentimes our initial, and especially if you're reading things in translation, then you're getting a certain translator's perspective, and some translators actually have a sectarian agenda. Others try to be more objective, but there are problems. So for subtle topics like this, it's really best to follow a traditional teaching, because otherwise you may get stuck at that first approximation, at that superficial level. There's so much more to understand. Any follow-up for your question? Go ahead.
So I was thinking about just these sages, or they call them Jivan Muktas, like Ramana Maharshi.
Mm-hmm.
And his teachings, he says that when you are dreaming, the waking world is negated. And when you wake up, the dreaming world is negated.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember this analogy from, I don't know which Upanishad it was, but it was like a fish like swimming from one bank to the other.
Right.
And then basically we just do the same thing between waking and dreaming.
Right.
So they're kind of equating them as experiences.
Not equating, teaching. Let me point out. Every teacher uses different metaphors. Shankara used different metaphors, Ramana Maharshi uses different metaphors, I use a bunch of metaphors. A metaphor is not the thing. So we don't want to confuse the metaphor with the thing. So when we're talking about waking up from dream or waking up from sleep, that's a metaphor. It's not the real thing. We're certainly not fish swimming from shore. That's obviously a metaphor. But even waking up from a dream is a metaphor. So we have to understand every teacher will use different metaphors, and we need to find out what do these metaphors direct us to understand. And so don't get stuck on the metaphor, don't get stuck on the words. Words are pointers. They're pointing to a reality. So the classic joke is the teacher points at the moon, and the teacher says, "Dekho, look." And the student looks at the hand. So this is a common problem. Okay, any other questions here? One more here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Every time the topic of desire comes up,
yes,
I catch myself wondering the difference between this desire and intent, motivation, or purpose, or these other things that drive us towards action, which is related also to the pursuit of moksha.
Correct. Which is also a desire.
So it sounds a little paradox that we have.
Not paradox, they're desires. A desire for a cup of coffee and a desire for moksha, they're both desires. Call it what it is. We don't need to make it complex. The difference is, when you fulfill your desire for a cup of coffee, do all your desires go away? When you fulfill your desire for moksha, all your desires go away. Most desires lead to more and more and more and more. After the cup of coffee, you want this, you want that, you want something else. But after the desire for moksha is fulfilled, the whole problem of having desires, of this compulsivity of raga dvesha, the whole thing goes away. Go ahead.
So what drives us towards moksha is still a desire, and that's how you
And what's wrong with that? We just said desire is a normal, natural human thing.
And then,
by the way, I'll take your question, but just to observe, the desires are not the enemy. Who said? Desire, actually Buddha said. Anyway, maybe this is one way we can see some divergence between the two traditions. Desires are natural. Ishvara gave us these desires, so they're not the enemy. Even Buddha would not. Buddha's teachings are also more subtle, and we have to go more deeply into that. So desire in and of itself is not the problem. Further, you can have a desire for something good, you can have a desire for something that's harmful. If you have a desire to take care of your family, that's a great desire, as opposed to many other desires. So in order to evaluate desire, we need a different perspective. Desires are not the enemy. What is the problem with worldly desires is the compulsivity associated with those desires, what I called raga and dvesha. That's where the problem comes, when we find ourselves compelled by these inner urges. The desire for moksha, called mumuksha is a technical term for that. The desire for moksha has raga dvesha associated with it, necessarily. The only time a desire doesn't have raga dvesha associated with it is if you're enlightened. Which means the desire for moksha is associated with, to some extent, raga dvesha. If you're driving to class this morning and a road is closed, that'll create some disturbance. And now you have to find some other way to go. That's it. There's a dvesha involved. And a raga. You want to come to class. Now, that's natural. Desire is natural. Raga and dvesha are natural until you're enlightened. When you're enlightened, you have a desire for a cup of coffee without raga dvesha. When you are enlightened, you no longer have the desire for moksha, what to speak of raga and dvesha associated with it. So this is kind of I think, a healthier perspective on desire. In spiritual life, desire gets demonized. And again, it's a first approximation. It's more subtle than that. Any following?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I just want to add to that the
Yes.
emotional reaction.
Yes.
So the question would be like, when you're enlightened, you still feel emotions, because the reaction is something that comes later. You realize the emotion and then you decide to act or not. But the enlightened people, they have emotions also?
Of course. Do enlightened people have emotions? I sure hope so. Otherwise, can you imagine? I'm enlightened, I have no emotions, none whatsoever, because enlightenment is a state in which you've transcended all emotions. That's inhuman. On the other hand, emotions, there are different kinds of emotions. When you feel threatened, you have certain emotions. Fear, anger, hate are common responses to feeling threatened. When you're enlightened, you don't feel threatened by anything. Period. How can Satchidananda Atma be threatened? So, an enlightened person has emotions not driven by feeling threatened. A lot of our so-called negative emotions would not naturally arise for that enlightened person. So an enlightened person has normal emotions. If the body, an enlightened person is about to be run over by a truck, they just say, "Come and get me." So there's a natural response of, to protect the body, but that's almost like a reflex. So an enlightened person will have reflexes, will have normal responses, but without these fear-based or threat-based responses. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's take some questions online. Got a bunch of them here. Question from Prashanto in Bangladesh. We know Atma is witness consciousness, so anything that happens to our body and mind, it is observed as Atma without being involved. The uninvolved observer, passive observer. That much is correct. If that is the case, Atma is just a neutral observer for both the internal and external world. However, to simply observe anything, we need a conscious effort with the help of the mind. And there's a problem here. And the problem is a lack of understanding the difference between observation and attention. These are very different words, and they need to be understood properly. Attention requires effort. When our classes go on and on and on, you start getting drowsy, and it takes some extra effort to pay attention. Natural, absolutely natural. Attention requires effort. Observation requires no effort at all. The state of attention is a state of the mind, an attentive mind. Consciousness can be neither attentive or inattentive, because attentiveness and inattentiveness are qualities of a mind. Consciousness just observes without comment. Just consciousness makes the attentive mind known to you in your current experience. The consciousness makes the inattentive mind known to you. So, without being attentive or inattentive. So the confusion here from Prashanto, the confusion is attention is a quality of the mind, observation is not a mental activity. Certainly you can turn your mind to observe things, but that's directing your attention. We use that expression, you observe something with your mind. Doesn't that mean you turn your attention to that? That's what it means. So it's a problem with the words observe and attentiveness, and that's where the confusion comes. Next from Martin, who lives in Montreal, Canada. You talked about karma and reincarnation as being doctrines in your Bhagavad Gita classes. How can I understand doctrines of karma and reincarnation as a matter of direct experience and not as a matter of belief? Our karma, the doctrine of karma and reincarnation, can you experientially confirm the truth of these doctrines of karma and reincarnation? And the answer is no. And this is a common confusion, not just for Martin, but for many people. And that is, karma and reincarnation are taught frequently in Advaita Vedanta, but we fail to discern that Advaita Vedanta contains different subject matters. The main subject matter of Advaita Vedanta is Tattvamasi, your true nature as Satchidananda Atma, which is non-separate from Brahman, the reality of the cosmos. That's the central teaching of Vedanta. Everything else is peripheral. And I mean that. It's on the side. It's not the main teaching. Tattvamasi is the main teaching. What about Panchabhuta, 5 elements? Peripheral. What about Sthula and Sukshma, the division between physical and non-physical realities? Beside the point. It's on the side. All of these teachings are not central to Vedanta. Now, doctrine of karma and reincarnation then are left as matters of belief, which means they cannot be experientially confirmed, nor can they be experientially dismissed. That's just what it is. That's why we call them beliefs. And that's okay. What has to be experientially confirmed is your understanding of Tattvamasi. That's what this whole thing is about. It's all about Atma vichara, self-inquiry. So if you believe Tattvamasi, I believe that I am that. Fine. But it won't put an end to suffering. Because, you believe I am. Let me make a bad joke out of this. Suppose somebody says, Tattvamasi, Tattva. No, it have to be in the first person. Aham brahmasmi, aham brahma, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman. Goes on repeating this mentally all day long, and then they stub their toe badly. And what happens to aham brahmasmi when your toe is throbbing? Go on. Which means aham brahmasmi or tattvamasi can be beliefs and not personal realizations. So, doctrine of karma and reincarnation can never be personally realized, and that's okay. We don't care. It's peripheral. Tattvamasi must be personally realized and not left as a matter of belief. Okay. Next, from Stefano, who teaches yoga, if I remember right, in Spain. This is very. I think you'll like this question. In the metaphor of the dream, I, the one who is sleeping, I am the underlying reality because of which the dream world appears in my mind. The I who is sleeping and the I in a dream are different. The sleeper and the dreamer are two different I's, so to speak. And so he wants Stefano is trying to make this very systematic. So according to our Vedantic use of the dream metaphor. So he says, according to that metaphor, the I who sleeps represents Brahman. Okay to an extent. This is what he presents as a structure. Brahman is that because of which the universe exists, in the same way as you, the sleeper, are the reality because of which the dream world exists. That's the metaphor. Then, Ishvara is the creator of the universe in my dream. I'm not sure I understand, but I think there's a problem here. And the problem, Maya is a power of mind that makes my dreams possible. That works. The I in the dream is mind. That sounds fine. Ishvara is the creator of the universe in my dream. Yeah, and I'm not sure that works. Instead of, this is a very detailed question, to go through the dream metaphor in the kind of detail required here would take too long. So let me make a comment about metaphors in general, and that is every metaphor has a purpose. And sometimes we misapply metaphors. And then we end up introducing some problems. I think, Stefano, your analysis is mostly good. I don't understand the Ishvara part, but I don't really want to get into the details here. Yeah, it's it's a little complicated. So anyway, the dream metaphor is powerful, but it needs to be used in the proper way. The dream metaphor, there is no metaphor that's used to explain everything. In fact, I think this will address Stefano's question. I think Stefano is trying to make the dream metaphor explain everything. There's no metaphor that explains everything. If it explains everything, it's not a metaphor. It's the real thing. So again, metaphors have to be used in context properly. Next question from Arju, who lives in Seattle. Let's see, a couple of questions. What is this anahat nada, this literally unstruck sound that some people hear in meditation? And I like this question because a lot of people have really amazing experiences in meditation. I've had plenty of experiences in meditation. But something to be considered. Suppose in meditation you hear a sound. And then you read someplace about this unstruck sound, this anahat nada. And then you go and read up on what is this nada, what does it mean, what is all. And what you're reading now is based on somebody else's experience of that sound. And that's where the problem lies. Because the sound you hear in meditation is not a sound out there in the universe. Whatever you experience in meditation is created by your own mind. Everything that you experience in meditation is created by your own mind. If you're meditating, if you're really, really devout and a really good meditator, and you see Lord Vishnu standing before you with his Shankha and chakra and all of this stuff, and all this glitter and light and all of this stuff, do you think he really came down and got stuck inside your head? Or is it an experience produced by your mind? Now, to say it's an experience produced by your mind is not putting it down. It's an experience, and a wonderful experience. But let us not confuse experience with reality. If it were real, when your meditation is over, it should still be there. But when your meditation comes to an end, whatever you experience goes away. What was our definition before of reality? That which persists, that which abides. So our minds are capable of creating amazing experiences, many of which may be helpful, a few of which may be distraction. And this meditation on a sound can be either. It can be helpful, but it can also be a distraction if seeking that sound becomes your goal in meditation. This is a common problem. You have an experience in meditation, it's wonderful, and then you want to repeat it tomorrow. So tomorrow, what is your motivation for meditating? To recreate an experience. A special experience. Why do you want to recreate that experience? Oh, it felt so good. Wait a minute. Doesn't that mean you're seeking pleasure? You're using meditation for the sake of seeking a pleasurable experience. How spiritual is that? That's as materialistic as going to Starbucks. It's seeking a pleasant experience. What's the difference? Instead of, well, there is a difference. And in Starbucks, you have to pay for it. This one you this one you don't have to pay anything. That's good. Right, no sugar, no fat. Good, I like that. So you get my point. Seeking experience is a common mistake made in meditation, and it's often associated with the so-called cosmic sound. To seek a cosmic sound or any other experience in meditation is a problem, because you're seeking experience. Okay? Meditation is not from the standpoint of Advaita Vedanta, meditation is a tool to help you discover your true nature. But if you're using that tool for the wrong purpose, for the sake of an enjoyable experience, you're often really in the wrong direction. Okay, a couple more questions here. Amit writes from India, can newly born children be considered sort of enlightened because their ego as identities with nationality, religion have not been found? We said, let me paraphrase the rest of this, suffering comes from identification, right? And identification, if you say, I am American, I am Indian, I am Hindu, I am this, I am that, those are all examples of identification. And wherever there's identification, there's suffering. Is that baby, the baby won't identify as being Hindu or Christian, the baby won't identify as being American or Indian, but the baby certainly will identify with the physical body. And because the baby is identified with the physical body, which is to say, there's no difference between the flesh and I meaning consciousness. Of course, the baby doesn't have even language at this point, but the sense that this is me without words, the baby will get that. This is me. And this is in pain, or this is hungry, or whatever. So the baby will suffer a lot, and babies do suffer a lot because they're helpless. What can they do? And they depend on mother and others to take care of them. So I don't think it's fair to equate that there's an innocence to a baby, absolutely, but not enlightenment exactly. This is Kirti from Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. My question is how to become free from dvesha. We're talking about raga dvesha. Here dvesha is the compulsion to avoid something undesirable. How can I be free from dvesha when I see traitors or the people who are acting against my country? Though I cannot act against them, the feeling of hatred is always there in my heart. That's a strong word, hatred. Is it fair to ignore and become neutral to these people? I love my country and cannot keep my patriotism aside, looking for your guidance. Okay. I don't want to... I wish, Kirti, I could talk to you and understand better what's going on. There's a kind of a healthy patriotism and an unhealthy patriotism. To be proud of your country and to want to protect your country and make it stronger, make it healthier. Of course, that's wonderful, wonderful. But there's a kind of unhealthy patriotism where you see people who profess political doctrines which you have judged to be bad for the country. For example, here we live in America, we live in a democracy. Suppose there's somebody who promotes Marxism. And they have a website, and they're out on the street, whatever I don't think anyone's going to be out on the street promoting Marxism, but just as an example. Suppose somebody promotes Marxism here in this country. Marxism is against democracy. And healthy patriotism would be to know that, okay, well, Marxism isn't going to help this country. Marxism is only going to hurt this country. Therefore, knowing that, I would not want to go on listening to this Marxist, because it's not what I want to learn about, because it's not helpful for my country that I love so much. That's a healthy patriotism. To hear the Marxist, but recognizing what he or she has to say is not what I want to embrace. To me, that's a healthy patriotism. An unhealthy patriotism is to say, this Marxist is the enemy. I hate Marxists. I wish they would go away. I wish they would die. That's an unhealthy patriotism, in my opinion. When I say my opinion, means you don't have to agree with me. This is an opinion. My opinion is that this unhealthy patriotism, leading people to feel hate, is harmful because it leads to violence. Hate leads to violence. You can hear the Marxist without hating him. If I heard a Marxist, I think the guy is crazy. Why hate the person? No need to hate the person. But if hate arises, and Kirti, the reason I'm making this point is you used that word, which is an extremely strong word. And it, to me, and again, you don't have to agree with me, but to me, hate is part of an unhealthy patriotism because it can lead to violence. Anyway, enough said. A couple more questions, and then we'll conclude. Let's see. Oh, and let me paraphrase this. This is from Pradyot, who lives in Bhubaneswar, which is in Orissa. We talked, and I'm going to paraphrase this is quite long. We talked about euthanasia when somebody is at the end of life, about to die, and in tremendous pain. And what I've said in other classes is you have to treat the pain. That means morphine. And if the morphine doesn't relieve the pain, more morphine. And if the doctor says if we give any more morphine, the person will stop breathing, more morphine. Because you're treating the pain. Who wants to die in pain? Better to go to sleep from the morphine. And I feel this quite strongly. But now he says, let me find the question, is that intervening to end someone's pain, there is a question, is intervening to end someone's pain through euthanasia in alignment with the doctrine of karma? And he says, if we accept the premise that our karma is predetermined, and that's where the error lies. Prarabdha karma is predetermined. That is, the karmas you're born with is predetermined. How those karmas become manifest in your life is not predetermined. And this is part of the complexity of the doctrine of karma. You are born with certain punya and papa karmas, but those punya and papa karmas do not predetermine particular events in life. This is a misunderstanding. That would be a doctrine of predestination. Doctrine of karma is not a doctrine of predestination. In fact, it's anti-predestination. So Punya karmas means things go better than expected. I mean, I'm dumbing it down quite intentionally here, but to oversimplify, good karmas make things go better than you expect, and bad karmas make things go worse than you expect. They simply push in a helpful direction or an unhelpful direction. So the implication here is that by administering morphine, you are intervening with predestined karmas. There are no predestined karmas. Karma doesn't predestine anything. In fact, you are using your karma to bless the person by freeing the person from pain. So don't mix up karma and predestination. Okay. Okay, one last question. This is from Uma, who lives in Chicago. Uma says, Advaita Vedanta is based on the truth, cause no harm. More specifically, the principle of dharma in Hinduism, not just Advaita Vedanta, but the Hindu main principle of dharma is ahimsa, which is what she's quoting, cause no harm. Then how do we understand forgiveness, is Uma's question. I understand that forgiveness is not about condoning someone's action towards us, especially if it's an action that causes harm. Good. So forgiveness is not to condone harmful action. What it is to deal with the harmful action without villainizing the person. The problem, okay, let me treat the question like this. Forgiveness is a solution to a problem. What is the problem? And this is what's not understood. Forgiveness is a solution to a problem. What problem? Is it the problem of somebody hurt you? And does forgiveness prevent that person from hurting you in the future? No. That's a problem that you have to handle, as Uma correctly understands. So the problem being addressed by forgiveness is not the problem of being hurt. What problem is being addressed by forgiveness? And that is, the problem is, after being hurt, we often hold on to blame, resentment, anger, frustration, emotional hurt. And by holding on to all those emotions, we suffer even more. We suffer again. We suffered first at the hands of the person who hurt us. Then we suffer again by holding on to all of this resentment and emotional pain, angst, they call it. Forgiveness is the solution to that problem. Forgiveness blesses us. A common mistake, and I don't think Uma made this mistake, but sometimes people think that forgiveness is for the sake of the other person. I forgive you. They could care less. If you forgive them or not, they don't care. Forgiveness is for you, to let go of that resentment and that lingering emotional hurt. So that's the proper way to understand forgiveness. And this will be a good place to conclude for today. Nice to have you all here. Nice to have all of you watching these satsangs. We'll end with a prayer. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramayaha sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya Mrityorma amritangamaya. Om Shanti 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 Om. That's it. See you next time.